What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Season 1, Episode 8 of Reflect. My name is Yasser.
I'm Jazel.
And by the title, you guys can already tell, and by listening to my voice, that we are on the 8th and final episode of the season. So for those who are new, welcome to Reflect. For those who are coming back, thank you for coming back to our channel. We're on the 8th episode of Reflect. Each season has 8 episodes, right? So this is going to be the season closer before we move on to Season 2. And as you guys can tell, it's just my brother and I kind of duoing this today. Sorry, I just had something stuck in my mouth. And Ozam is currently not with us just because he is caught up in life. He's doing his own thing, right? So just my brother and I. And yeah, how have you been recently?
I've been good. Just chilling, not up to much. But life's been good. I'm still unemployed, still trying to find a job, but it's not been bad. The weather changed in Chicago. For those of you who are in Chicago, as you guys know, we went from like 75 degrees to like 30 degrees. But other than that, not much has changed since the last episode. I'm still kind of just trying to, move with life and find a job, to be honest. It's getting really boring now.
Yeah.
Just sitting at home and doing nothing.
Yeah.
So just trying to stay productive and trying to make the best use of my time.
Mm-hmm.
What have you been up to? What's been going on in your life?
Just school, really. Still trying to find an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier. I'm still kind of on the same page as my brother. We've just been trying to find stuff to do, keep us productive, and this podcast is one of the things. Is why we look forward to it. And I'm okay with the weather. As far as the weather changes go, I'm fine with it. I don't really like how the sun goes down early, and apparently Arizona is the only state that doesn't do that, so I might have to go to Arizona. Other than that, just been doing my own thing, just kind of chilling, and that's pretty much it. The seasonal Starbucks drinks came back, so I actually had the caramel brulee latte, and that slapped.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of sugar, but it was really good.
So. Yeah. How'd you feel about Drake's new album? What was it called? Her Loss?
I got lost in her loss. It was pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite song was probably Jumbotron Poppin', whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It reminded me of like his old like classics, right? About like how it'd be like more R&B than like hip hop, like rap sort of situation. But I kind of saw that Jimmy Cooks fits the vibe of Her Loss, so I think he was like kind of like just testing the waters of like how something that's complete trash would just do on the charts and stuff, even though like some of his songs blew up on TikTok. This album was significantly more polished. It was a lot better, and they actually had decent verses, and he actually had a lot of shots towards like people too,
right?
Like Megan Thee Stallion, and I think like Ice Spice, stuff like that. So it was an interesting album, though. I liked it a lot. I haven't like memorized all the lyrics yet, but yeah.
I heard 21 got clowned and Drake got clowned too for their song Rich Flex or whatever.
Yeah, because a lot of people have been making memes about that, because 21 or Drake sounds like he's kind of doing his thing on that song. So you guys will understand if you've seen the TikToks. But that song was pretty good too. Like I know he had one of those songs that was kind of like Astroworld, where he had 2 songs in one.
Wasn't that Rich Flex?
No, I think that was like Major Distribution was one of them, because he starts it off really slow and then he kind of gets like really upbeat.
Right.
And then I think Rich Flex might have been one of them too.
Yeah.
But he had like a couple songs that had like transitions either at like the end or the beginning.
Yeah.
It was nice. I liked it.
Yeah.
Still just have to bump it like in the car and stuff like that, But it'll be at like parties and stuff soon. I'm sure people are already playing it.
Yeah, I think that song that you mentioned earlier, the Jumbo song, I think that one, like, it goes really hard. That's the one I really like on the album a lot. So I think he dropped a fire album with 21, and it's not bad. So yeah.
And the other thing is, there's a fun fact. So I was actually just stalking his page to see. I don't know. I was just on his page for some reason, and when he dropped CLB, which was last year, right, when he dropped Certified Lover Boy, he actually had one of his songs that was on there, like within the teaser for the trailer of CLB after he dropped. I think either after he dropped it or whatever it was, right. That song had Young Thug on it, but then he took Young Thug's verse and he just made a collab album with 21. So I guess he's been working on it for a while, and I also heard that KD actually listened to the song or the album before it came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kevin Durant listened to the album before it came out, so that's interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I feel that. All right, well, let's get into it, guys. Do you want to go ahead and intro today's topic?
Yeah, so today's topic is actually going to be humanity, right? So, humanity in the most vague definition possible is pretty much just feeling like affection towards people, feeling like having this sense of like being aware of like your surroundings, being aware of like what other people feel, how they could possibly feel, and not being insensitive, right? So
Mhm.
that's pretty much like humanity in an essence. And obviously, like all over social media and stuff, you see people saying like, "Oh, we've lost faith in humanity." That's pretty much what it means, right?
Right.
Like we've lost faith, or people have lost faith to like care for each other, like have like this feeling that like yeah, like we should treat others how we want to be treated.
Right.
Is my definition of humanity.
Right. 100%. Yeah. So do you like the definition of humanity is absolutely correct. And I think like humanity in it itself is like basically caring for those that are not like in your life, right? Like Yasser and I, right? I care for Yasser, I care for Ozam, right? You basically like in an essence, in a nutshell, humanity is basically feeling for those who are not living in the same situation as you, right? And being kind of like aware of that situation, right? Caring for people that are not necessarily in your life, and caring for those situations that don't affect you, right? So, in my personal opinion, I think that humanity just does not exist how it used to back in the day. You know, like a lot of people back in the day, like my boys and I are the 4 or 5 boys that I have, we exhibit humanity in a way where it's like, you know, like if I call up any one of my boys and I'm like, hey, like I need this from you, they won't expect anything back, right? You know what I'm saying? But ajkal, like nowadays, it's like, you know, if I do something for you, what are you gonna do for me? You know, like that pure humanity that was there a couple years ago, that, you know, like it's okay, like here, just take the money, you know, just pray for me, or, you know, just take the money, give it back to me whenever, wherever, you know, like it doesn't matter to me. Now it's like, oh, hey, like make sure you pay me back in 4 weeks. Hey, make sure you pay me back with, you know, more than what I gave you because this took a hit on me. You know, like people just don't care for other people like how they used to, and if they do, there's a price tag attached with it. You know, they only care if they can get something out of you, right? They'll help you and they'll, you know, kind of be in your midst and want to help you even more if they know that they can, you know, be successful off of you and what you're trying to do, right? I'm just kind of repeating myself, but that genuine humanity, I just don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people attach a price tag to sincerity, right?
Right.
Because everyone, I feel like everyone has gotten selfish, like in a way where it's inflated their ego, right?
Yeah.
Or like they're just so selfish to the point where they don't care about anyone else.
Right.
And selfishness is good, right? You know, if you're selfish in a way where it's constructive, like positively to your life or to others' lives. Like if you're selfish in a manner where you have to step away to like rejuvenate yourself or do whatever you gotta do to come back and like serve yourself to other people like better, or like if you're like you know, the breadwinner for like a household or something like that, you gotta do what you gotta do to like come back and make sure you're like okay, right? That selfishness is fine. But I feel like people get selfish to the point where they just don't look at anyone else other than themselves. And even that in certain situations, like it's okay, like if it's life or death, right? I mean, that's a little controversial, but I don't mean it like life or death meaning like if someone is literally like contemplating their life in front of you or something like that. What I mean is like if you're put in a situation where you have to like watch your own needs over others because you know that's the circumstance you're given, right? I'm talking more so about just people doing daily actions, like out of like genuine actions out of their heart to show that humanity still exists, or like they actually care about other people rather than themselves, you know?
Right.
Like I've had occurrences where I just be in Starbucks, like when I used to go to Starbucks like a lot. This happened like 3 years ago, but obviously it stuck out to me, so I didn't forget, right? I think the person in front of me like ended up paying for my drink. So what I ended up doing is that I just paid for the person behind me. It was just like a chain of like, it was like a reaction, you know? And like if the person behind me, if they want to pay for the person behind them, that's totally up to them. Like with their circumstances that they're given, with the financial circumstances they're like bestowed, whatever, right? But it that has like a spark to it, and it goes to show like, hey, you know, like people like this still exist. And I actually carried the act forward because I didn't pay for a drink that day, you know, and I still got a drink. So I just made sure that the person behind me was good too, because I mean I still intended to pay for something that day, you know. So whether that continued, obviously, once again, as I stated before, is entirely up to them. But it's just small stuff like that goes a long way.
Right. You know what, that's a really good point that you make, but I think the problem occurs is that, yes, like as you said, your first point, right? Yasser said like, oh, like being selfish and taking care of yourself within your own because you have to, that's fair, right? And not necessarily being able to like contribute to others, because if you contribute to others, it's going to take away from your quality of life. I get that, you know. It's tough out there, especially right now with the job market and everything. You got to look out for yourself before others, right? 100%. But I think the problem occurs is when people have the means to take care of other people and they still don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the problem. That's where the humanity aspect is kind of taken away. You know, like I know so many people, right? So many people that make millions, right? I can, like, everyone knows people that make millions, right? And they are the most stuck to their money because they're like, you know, if we give this away, then what are we gonna do? You know, like, and in our religion, we believe in that if you give charity, it doesn't deprive you of your wealth, right? It actually increases your wealth because you're helping others, right? And I've seen on the contrary, I've seen so many people that have absolutely nothing, right? Give so much more than anyone could imagine, right? Mm-hmm. And these people are like in situations where they're running paycheck to paycheck, right? And they still put their hand forward and help those in need because they can resonate with that feeling mm-hmm. of being like, you know, wanting help and no one being able to help them. Mm-hmm. You know, like you don't necessarily know how you feel until you're put into that situation, you know. And that's why I feel like humanity is kind of being not depreciated, it's kind of being like taken away from mm-hmm. our society, is because in the States we're blessed to like feel these things, right? Like have water, have good food and all that. Like let's go live in a country where they struggle to get clean water, mm-hmm. you know, then we'd appreciate these things so much more, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah. And similarly to that, I feel like yeah, as you mentioned, like if people are put in a state where they actually are taken away from their blessings, kind of like how my brother and I are taken away from our jobs currently, right? Like I'm sure he's learned a lot, but I've certainly learned a lot that, you know, like a job, I used to be able to get jobs like very easily, right? Not to boast or anything, but it was something that wasn't too difficult for me to get. And me being unemployed for the time that I have been unemployed, I've realized that a job is like probably the biggest blessing that I had. Because, you know, for me, like as I mentioned before, it's more than just a job. It's like kind of therapeutic in a sense because I enjoy engaging with people. I love going out and like having like an agenda, even if I don't have anything to do that day. In like my school life or like, you know, just my whatever, like with my relationships, like with my friends and stuff like that. So that was like one of the biggest blessings that was taken away from me. And I'm still like, you know, kind of like, I'm not so affected by it anymore, but it's just like I've come to realize like, hey, you know, when I had this opportunity, when I had everything going for me, I should have been more appreciative of it, right? So I feel like people that are not so blessed with stuff like, you know, clean water, being able to shower under hot water, whatever the circumstances are, they look at us and they're like, wow, like these people have everything, but that's like just day-to-day stuff to us, you know?
Right. So yeah, it's a blessing because the thing is that in a way having a job has allowed me to learn like a lot, or sorry, not having a job has allowed me to learn so much about myself as compared to like having a job, right? And I guess like the way I started thinking about it when I first, you know, I kind of got laid off, was that I was like, this sucks, you know, like I worked really hard. You know, I just graduated. I finally got something good lined up and they decided to lay me off, right? And in the moment, yes, I'm human. I felt that emotion and I was like, this sucks. But, you know, when you take like a week or two and you sort of realize it, Yasser, you're like, you know, you're still breathing. You know, you still have a roof under your head. You got clean water. You know, you have food. You know, you're clothed. You're able to bathe. You're able to do all these things. So even though you're not blessed in a monetary way, you're blessed in like just being able to live life, you know? Like we went to the hospital recently and we like saw so many people that were just like kind of alive, right? But they were just kind of there, like on this planet, you know? Like mentally they were deteriorating, you know, physically they were deteriorating, you know, and they were just kind of there until they're kind of gone, you know? Mm-hmm. So like even situations like those, right? Even people being in the hospital, right? People don't care, right? People don't care about the situations that, oh, like these people are dying. Literally, they're about to die, right? They're on so many medications, you know, they're just kind of knocked out like 75% of the day, you know? Like, where's the humanity towards that? You know, like, I feel like we're so like caught up with our own lives that we don't take a second to kind of appreciate, like, you know, alhamdulillah, like we're not in a hospital. We're not like, you know, like we can breathe, we can see, we can feel, you know, we can literally go outside right now and drive ourselves to get ice cream. You know, people would literally, you know, like die for that type of stuff.
We might end up doing that after this
Yeah,
podcast, actually,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's been a long day. This is like, I don't know, you even know what attempt this is for like filming this podcast, but probably gonna go grab some Culvers with extra Snickers,
Yeah.
concrete mixer.
But I mean, bro, like stuff like that, people would literally like they would just crave that, you know, like people when their life circumstances are like, oh, like, you know, I can't get up and do something. They're just like, oh, remember the days where I could just drive my car, or, you know, like walk, or like, you know, go see, or like smell, or like, you know, do the simple things in life. You know, like we take that for so like granted. You know, like the humanity within us has been like just like brought down to like, you know, me, you know. And like this goes like to the next point, that like people only care for situations that only involve them, right? And only them, right? Like what do you have to say in regards to that in terms of humanity?
I feel like it just kind of comes back to like the selfishness of people, right? Like they don't get involved in stuff unless it has something to do with them, or like unless it has, like, as we mentioned earlier, like a price tag to boost like their whatever, right? Like their bank account, their like how others perceive them, you know what I mean? So I feel like people just genuinely don't really care about like seeing like, and that's why like even like the smallest stuff that you see on social media is just so like applauded, because people just don't see that on a day-to-day basis, you know. So when they do see like a small act of like someone caring for another person, even if it's like the smallest thing, they're like, oh wow, you know, like humanity still exists, you know. And yeah, people just don't like to get involved, whether that be like because they either just don't care, or they want some sort of benefit from it. If they don't see that, they don't think twice about getting involved.
Right. Yeah, you made a good point about social media and how like people quote and they like post stuff about like, oh, humanity still exists, right? And they're very small things that these individuals are doing. You know, they're super small things, but why is it that we take such a big step and post it on social media? It's it's because humanity is, you know, kind of diminishing. And that is why these small acts of service are so like they're so like profound, and they're so like, you know, like they're applauded on social media, is because no one does stuff like this anymore, you know, like especially living in like Chicago, like living in like big cities like Chicago, LA, Houston, California, or Houston, yeah, LA, New York, right? Like cities like this, right? We are like so caught up within ourselves that we only care for ourselves, right? And situations that involve us. How can I get better here? How can I get better here? Financially, physically, mentally, right? And we just want to keep climbing up the ladder, right? But we forget the people that are just looking at us, right? And just trying to be where we are. Even point one, there's millions of people that would literally look at us and be like, I wish I was here, right? We're just so caught up in climbing the ladder. We're just so caught up with like caring for situations that only involve ourselves and only ourselves, that we forget to take a step back and kind of realize that maybe we should help others, you know? And I know this is a very big topic in Desi culture as well, that Pakistani culture and Indian culture, right? We care for others, right? We love others. We want to help them. But do you really? You know, like I know so many people that claim that they care about their family, but when their family members come and ask them for money or help, it's like, yo, like back up a little bit, right? And I understand it's a fine line, right? But I think the idea comes back to humanity, because you don't, the last person, right, especially in our culture, the last, I guess, individuals that you want to see succeed is your own family. Because, you know, there's that jealousy there. You know, like, how did he do this? How did he get here? Right? And I feel like that's where the humanity is lost. Because if you genuinely cared for your family, you would want to see your family winning with you. Not comparative to just keeping your mouth shut and keeping your secret shut. Right? Like, if I figured out the secret formula to doing something, right, I wouldn't necessarily share it with everyone, because then everyone would be doing it, right? But I would help individuals, you know, at least better their lives in their current situations and where they're at, you know, because I want to see everyone succeed, you know? And if you're gonna be more successful than me, do it. You deserve it. If you put in the work, you put in the time, do it. I will applaud you and I will support you through the journey, you know? Like, people just don't wanna, you know, have that humanity and share those secrets. You know, like what do you feel about that when it comes to like our culture and like sharing your recipes for like success?
I feel like even though that's like written in our culture, like it's written in our religion, some people still forget to remember that. You know, they still forget to like actually live by that. Because yeah, as you mentioned, like there's a lot of toxicity in our culture, right? And not only in our culture, but just in like society in general, right? Our culture more specifically, because that's like the culture we belong to. So like we've seen a little bit more of that, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, I just feel like everyone, obviously it's easier said than done, but everyone should kind of just be more like happy for each other rather than like kind of breaking each other down, because at the end of the day, like that's what shapes humanity, right? Like in essence, like that's what is the definition of humanity if you look at it from like a bigger picture. It's like shaping one another to become better, not, you know, tear each other down and stuff like that.
Right, 100%. Do you think that we've been desensitized to humanity in terms of, like, for example, the social media aspect, right? I think it's very much so diminished or diminishing, right? There's only few individuals that truly do show pure humanity, right? So do you think within our society, it is something that's being like completely desensitized?
What do you mean by that? Like as far as it goes by like people not caring about others?
Yeah, that.
I believe so, yeah, just because you know, I mean, you do have like those small occurrences of people like caring for each other and stuff like that and like doing acts of good, but if you think about it, like even those acts are kind of like for their own, they could be for their own selves, you know, to gain their views or
You
like
never know. Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, this person's doing good. I feel like it matters about like what a person does when no one is looking, or like what they do on a daily day basis if like the cameras aren't rolling and stuff like that either. So yeah, I certainly feel like it's being desensitized just because you know, it just keeps progressing. It's not really slowing down, and people don't really care to just kind of like observe and see what's going on. They kind of just like either make memes about it or just kind of like bandwagon on like what's popular at the time,
Right.
as far as like trends go and stuff like that. There's a lot of awareness, right, on social media. I just feel like people don't have the courage to do anything about it.
Right.
Me being one of those people, you know, like if I had a bigger platform, or like if I had a following, or like if I had more capital, I'd probably actually like do something about what's going on in, like the world, like certain circumstances, like donate money or whatever if I could, right? But there's a lot of influence, but there's not enough action. And that's what I see on like social media, even like TikTok and all these popular platforms. Like there's so much awareness, there's so much people saying like, hey, this is going on. You know, CNN doesn't broadcast this or CNN doesn't broadcast that, but no one like steps up to say anything. Like the most they'll do is just repost, or like, you know, like open like even a petition. I mean, that's like that's helpful to a degree, or like start a fundraiser. Like that's actual like progress, that's action, you know. Like even though it's digital action, I mean, we live in like a remote world, it's still action, you know. You could literally raise money by just opening up a GoFundMe or whatever and just donate it to whatever, you know.
Right.
So I just feel like there's not enough action to back up the influence.
Right. Two things. First thing is that I think that reposting and doing all of that stuff is great because it allows for a power to take place, right? Because the power of the internet is so heavy, right? But I think implementing that with an action is something that's going to help individuals kind of revive their hearts, right? And take a step back and try to focus on, you know, like people that are not necessarily family or friends to them, right? I think we are going to get in a good place and restore our humanity entirely is when we start caring about our friends entirely, our family entirely, and when we start caring about people that have no like relevance to our lives, right? I think that humanity, we've been desensitized to being like exhibiting humanity since a very young age, right? Now let me explain what I'm trying to say. Let's take it back to elementary school, middle school, high school, right? You are given tests, you're given quizzes, and you're given exams, right? I guess maybe not in elementary, but throughout your educational until you get to college, right? Even in college, right? And you're taught that you need to eliminate the competition. You need to do the best out of the best in order for you to succeed, right? And Yasser, this is something that's like so prevalent in our Desi culture, right? Is that our parents have instilled it within us that you need to come out on number one, right? You need to be on top. You need to get the best grades, the best this and best this. And yes, I agree that that will help you succeed in life, right? But when you're being conditioned to behave like that since first grade, second grade, and having that raw cutthroat mentality being instilled in you, as you grow older and you develop, you start to not care to help others kind of succeed as well, right? Like I know so many people, right, that would be like, oh, okay, like he doesn't get it, that's his problem, I'm gonna study for this test and do what I gotta do to pass, right? And you're being taught that first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, right? During my time, there was like appreciation medals that were just given to everyone, right? Whether you got first place or second place, you know, you got an appreciation medal. But now it's like you kind of just only receive satisfaction, or you receive recognition only if you place the highest amongst the high. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's desensitizing you to other people's emotions and their thoughts and what goes on in their mind, right? Because there's in what I try to think is that there's the person that you put out to the world, and then there's the person that's actually you, right? And me personally, like I don't necessarily let my inner thoughts out to the world, right? I don't necessarily let my emotions out to the world, right? To a degree, yes, but I am my own person as well, right? And I guess like then there's the outer version of me, right? There's like the person that everyone knows Jazel to be out in the world, right? But again, I can differentiate between those things, right? Going back to the point is that when you're just being slowly having doses of desensitization ever since a young age, you can grow up and just not care about anyone, right? You will do anything, whether that's right or wrong, to be at the top. And I feel like this has started at such a young age. Right? What do you have to say in regards to that?
Yeah, I agree, because your childhood has a lot of influence as to like who you are in the future, and like who you are as an adult, and what characteristics you carry on into your life, right? I believe there's stuff in your life that you learn within childhood that could be resolved, right? Like, rather than like, other than the fact of like not caring about people, like if you have habits that you want to break, stuff like that, I feel like those things could be broken. They could be diminished and just removed from your life, or like if you don't want to carry that onto your future. As far as conditioning, like emotionally goes, I feel like that's something that's very difficult, because like that's the only way you that's the only way you learn how to feel. That's the only way like you know like what to do with specific emotion and stuff like that, right? So I feel like that is very difficult to actually like break through, unless you, I mean, I don't even know if it's possible. Like I think it could be like, it could be worked upon, but I don't necessarily think it could necessarily just be like removed out of your life entirely. You know, like if people are conditioned to like be like, oh yeah, like I don't care about anyone else, like I'm only gonna worry about myself. It's like, okay, like how is that gonna affect your future relationships? How is that gonna affect when you have to take care of your parents? Or like how's that gonna affect when your pet dies? You know, like you're not gonna feel anything, because you're just gonna be like so numb to everything, you know. And I feel like even people that do feel a lot, like they do the opposite. Like they wanna be numb, they don't want to feel anything, right? So they do the opposite, because they have so much baggage, like they felt so much during their childhood years, and they actually like grew up with like trauma or whatever the situation might be. Like they just have like all this emotion that they don't want to carry anymore, or they just want to escape from it, so they do all these like drugs or whatever to like kind of just numb that feeling, right? But yeah, I feel like it just kind of goes back to like your childhood, and like how your parents, like what they showed you to like be affectionate towards like pets, or be affectionate towards like other people or other children or other like human beings. And that goes back to morals, right? Like what your parents taught you and stuff. Like we see little kids like when they're with their parents and stuff, and like if we're waving at like a kid or something, like if it's just like a kid at Target or whatever, and he's just looking at us, we'll just wave at him or her, and they'll like the mom or the dad will be like, oh, like, you know, like say hi, whatever your name is, you know. So it's like even those tiny things goes to show like that builds upon respect, and the respect like builds upon morals, and then etc. It's just like a chain that keeps going, you know. And then you have like this well-mannered person that, you know, you wonder like, oh, your parents raised you so well, or, you know, they're like so fond and stuff. So it just goes back to your childhood and like what you were initially given, like what instincts you were provided to kind of work with. And I feel like the parents obviously have like a heavy influence on that, you know. Like people even say like your parents love language is what you expect in a partner, and etc. So it just goes back to your childhood and what you were seeing at a young age, like, you know, subconsciously.
Right. I think I want to touch base on a point that you said is that people, it's hard to restore that humanity within people. I think it's doable, but I think it takes two situations. And I think those two situations are you yourself are humbled greatly, or your life situation is that where, again, you're humbled and you're placed in kind of a situation where you have no choice but to feel. Right? Because if you're humbled and you're at, again, like going back to our ego episode, right? If you're at, sitting on the Burj Khalifa of ego, right? And you got the world in your hands, right? And then you're brought to the bottom, right? What does that do to you, right? I feel like people that have, like, don't have humanity within them can have it be restored, but they would need to be greatly humbled in order to be not so much desensitized to it. Because I think that two things stick with people. One is what you say to them, right? And depending on who that's coming from, that can stick with you for a long way. But one thing that people don't forget is how you make them feel and how they have felt, right? So if they felt, like at their lowest point within the process of them being humbled, right? When they make it back up to the top, they're not going to forget how they felt, So that way they may be able to kind of, break that desensitization within themselves and like kind of help the community, but to your point, I agree with you, because not once someone makes it to the top, it's very rare for them to kind of come back to the bottom and feel that humanity, So, I mean, yeah, it's, I just think it is what it is, to be honest. It's kind of like the reality of life. Like, do you think that in the world there's any humanity left? Do you think that, or is just the desensitization of humanity the reality of life?
I think that the desensitization is kind of the reality, because as like we've talked about previously, right? Like when you see those small acts of kindness or whatever on Instagram or social media or TikTok, it kind of blows up because there's so many people paying attention to that. And they're like, wow, like we haven't seen this in forever. So I certainly do feel like people are becoming more and more like desensitized to it. Like they're starting to care less and less, just because we're kind of transitioning into more so like a remote world than like a real world. And what I mean by that is like more people are seen to be interacting over social media, and you can connect with all these people like all over the world remotely rather than in person. And it's much easier to do that than hold like a conversation in person, right? So I feel like when people are so heavily influenced by, just having this connectivity all around the world, obviously they see whatever they believe, whether it's fake or not, whether it's scripted or whether someone handed the other person a $5 bill to do a fake surprise, right? They just don't care because they see all this information and they just see all this media like remotely, like readily available at their hands, and they just keep scrolling. If they do see something unfortunate or sad, they'll either repost it to make a meme out of it, or they'll repost it to because everyone else is doing it or whatever the cause may be, So I don't know. I certainly do believe people are becoming more and more desensitized to it. It's becoming like the reality of life, and people are just starting to care less. And I think like one of the points that you made are that people need to be humble to realize what situations others are put in, right? And yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like I feel like people need to they can't see that unless they feel it,
right?
And that's why they need to kind of be brought back down to experience that. But
right.
It's just so hard when you have no way of like being broken down. Almost, it's kind of like how like your character builds up when you're like a child, and then you have to be grown into like an adult, obviously, right? And like have your own life and stuff. It's like you don't you have like this foundation that can't really be broken,
right?
So,
and I completely agree with everything that you said, in terms of like it's hard to break that down. And I think like it is the reality of life, but I think there's two things that you could do to restore it, right? Simple things is, in order to revive the heart, allow yourself to feel again, right? Charity in our religion, such a big thing, right? Starbucks, right? Getting someone Starbucks, right? Just getting your heart to feel again for someone that is not close to you, right? Like when we get Starbucks for other people, right? Whenever we do that, right? It's like we feel good, it's like, the other person has a chain effect of like, oh, like, they paid for my Starbucks, right? Their humanity is restored. And wouldn't people post that on their stories? Like, oh, humanity restored, people, or someone paid for my Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
it's stuff like that that can revive your heart, right? And then if you do that, it's a chain effect and it can revive other people's hearts, right? It's like basically acts of service, what you do, like small things, right? For example, like whenever I go get food, I always make sure I get something for my brother too, right? If I'm getting a Starbucks drink, I'll make sure I get one from him or my mom or whatever it may be, right? It allows those around you to know that you care for them, right? And strangers to know that people are still loving and caring within the world, if you're in terms of Starbucks drinks, right? Or anything. And it's just not like so cutthroat. You know what I mean? And it just allows you to feel, it allows you to bring that emotion in and just be a human at its purest form and not be so cutthroat. And I think like this, in this process of not having a job, I've learned that you know, there's so many layoffs. Like Twitter had 11,000, right? Meta had 11. I think Twitter too.
Oh, I don't know.
I think Twitter had 11,000 as well. Layoffs. Meta had 11,000 layoffs. Every single time I go onto LinkedIn, whether it's after a week, some big company is laying off, right? And I like every single post that I potentially see about a layoff is because I'm going through that feeling, right? I can feel the human aspect with them and what they're going through, right? And they're going through it so much worse than I am because they're independent. They got families, they got kids, right? I'm still, you know, kind of doing my stuff and like I'm being taken care of, right? But imagine their situations, right? Imagine the desensitization that takes place for people that are looking for jobs. They only care about themselves and only them, right? And that's fair because you have a family. But don't you think that if you like weren't so desensitized to it and you also cared about other people and like help them in the come up, wouldn't that put like some type of blessing within your life? Wouldn't the reality of life kind of change and allow people allow people to care about situations that don't only involve them? Like, don't you think that humanity would start to exist again? It would be a trickle effect, right? But I mean, that's my take on it. But yeah, would you like to add anything?
Like, people would go together. It's kind of like a partnership, you know? Like, you don't necessarily do stuff for your own self within, like, a relationship. You have to realize that you and your partner, whoever that may be, like, you guys are both in that together, you know? So it's like one action that you do could necessarily trickle effect, as you mentioned, like, down to your partner and, like, kind of, like, remove happiness from both of you, right? Or like put both of you guys in like calamity or whatever the situation like may be. But like I feel like since people are like involved in relationships and it's just them and the other person, that's why they hold that more dearly to their heart rather than like them and a stranger, because obviously you wouldn't do something for a stranger the way that you would do it for like your relative or someone you know, right? So I feel like if we just think of it in a way where we think of it as just people breathing, living the same air, just trying to like, you know, accomplish something in life, like make a living or like be foundational or like have like a purpose or do whatever they got to do. Like I feel like if you just kind of open your mind and think about it in that aspect, it really goes to show that the small stuff, like it really does matter at the end of the day, even though like we don't see a lot of that anymore, right? It's just, you know, to make sure that you are aware of like your surroundings and make sure that you're like, even if you like spark a conversation with someone, or even if you just go ask someone about their day during your Starbucks, like why you're waiting for Starbucks, and they tell you about their life or whatever the situation may be, it's like you don't know how impactful that is for them, you know. Or if you pay for someone's like Starbucks drink or whatever the situation may be, like at the time that lady or whoever the person was paid for my Starbucks, I had a job, right? I was fine, but she just felt the need to like do a kind of like an act of kindness, right? And that went a long way because I paid for the person behind me, and then, you know, as I mentioned, like it was up to the person behind me if they wanted to pay. But it just kind of, it goes to show that there's like people that still care about you in this world, you know. So I think we just need to think of people as people and not base it upon like, oh yeah, like this person is close to me, so I'm gonna do this for them or do this for that. It's not obviously, like it's not easy to just go up to someone and be like, oh yeah, like I'll pay off your student loan. Like you can't do that, obviously, right? And in some circumstances, like if a person is shy, like yeah, you do have to establish a relationship with them in order for them to open up and like express how they feel. But I'm talking about just like people that you don't necessarily have to do that with in order to do an act of kindness, right? Like you could pay for someone's drink, or you could buy them food, buy them a meal or whatever. Like this one time at my previous job, I think like one of like the AT&T supervisors, he literally went out of his way to buy me like a meal, like just a like halal food meal, because I don't know what happened, but I think there was like we had like a. It's not called like it's kind of like a potluck, but it's like when we order food instead. It's just like dinner or whatever, like from the GM or the supervisor or whatever. And I think the pizza had like meat, and obviously like me being Muslim, I can't eat like just it has to be like meat that's processed in a specific way, right? So the manager of like the AT&T, like he was a representative for AT&T, he just went out of his way to literally just drive and get me like Fahrenheit,
Yeah.
and that meant a lot, you know, because I went to show like there's like a community, there's like a family. It's not just because he could have easily went back and just ate whatever they had back there, but like he made sure that I was like included. That made me feel like it was a good culture, like
Right.
the previous job that I was at was like a lot of the people were like that. They were all like very close knit. Everyone like had each other's backs, and that's something like like I experienced that for the first time within like my 3 years of retail. So
It's a good feeling.
yeah, it was a really good feeling. Like it makes you feel like you're actually a part of something rather than just being solo. Like you're playing multiplayer in life,
Right.
rather than just being solo.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
yeah.
I feel that. No, I couldn't have said it any better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dope that you got to experience that with your other work, and like how it was kind of like a family.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you were all strangers and you guys weren't connected in any way,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like a family. So that's dope.
Yeah,
That's
it was really nice.
Yeah.
And I hope like if people are on the same page as us and they're looking for a job, like don't settle for anything that's like toxic. I know there's a lot of people that are still like in high school, straight out of college, that are like watching this right now. So I'm just gonna say this like right off the bat: do not settle for anything that makes you like dread going to work. Like I know over time, after you had a job, like even my brother and I, like when we had jobs, you would dread going into work some point, sometime, because it's
100%.
it's still time that's dedicated to something. But if you actually just enjoy what you do, if you have like a couple of friends that you made at work, it makes a big difference, right? And that really comes down to like what the management's like and stuff like that. So just make sure that your job that you're currently in is positive. Like even if it's dreadful, like because you're dedicating time to it, just make sure that it's uplifting and it gives you energy. That's what a job does for me, right? Like that's also what I'm currently looking for. And like even Ozam, like him and I used to work at Walgreens and we both hated it, right? And then Ozam started working at where he's working right now, and he loves it there. I know he loves it there. He has a lot of friends, he has a lot of people that he could just kind of just chill there with and do his own thing. So if you're looking for a job, that's probably my biggest tip. And my other biggest tip is like just don't fold backwards. Like make sure you have your schedule and all that stuff like aligned before you let like a manager take advantage of you.
Right. Like allow yourself to keep your humanity in check.
Yeah.
Right. And not let your mental be kind of lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like make sure they're humanitarian, not just ruthless and rude.
Yeah.
You know.
Everything's cutthroat, man.
Yeah.
It's the corporate world. Everything is cutthroat.
Mhm.
Like 11,000 people were laid off. Do you think that kind of lies underneath the umbrella of being, like human, right?
I mean,
Having humanity? Of course not. But
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's corporate America. You got to do what you got to
Yeah.
do for the business, right?
And people are only doing it for their own good too. So
Right,
it's
so-
like that's a prime example of
That's a lot of that's going on right now.
yeah. So that's a prime example of people just looking out for themselves rather than caring about their employees. Or I mean, I know some companies like provide a severance. Like even when I got laid off because of COVID, I was provided a severance. And that was nice, because it was out of my control. It was just like natural causes, I guess you could say. But like probably a lot of these people are only getting like 2 or 3 weeks worth of pay of like what they made, and that's it. You can't really do much off of that unless like you have savings, and if you're living check to check, then you need to find a job ASAP.
Yeah.
So it
I
just
feel that.
I mean, the CEO of those companies just decided that's what's best and not compensate those people. And yeah.
Right. Yeah, life's a struggle, but that's why you call it life. You can't
Yeah.
really do it with it. You just got to roll with the punches. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that'll actually wrap up our episode,
Mhm.
the final episode of Reflect.
Season 1, yep.
Yeah, season 1, episode 8. Great conversation. I loved that this was off the dome.
Mhm.
And we had a couple points like right there,
Yeah.
but they were just like kind of bullet pointed for us to kind of segue into a conversation. But this whole conversation was just off the dome.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed it. And I hope,
Likewise, yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Mhm.
Guys, stay tuned for season 2, episode 1 of Reflect, which will be uploaded on Sunday. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. And let us know in the comment section down below if you like the Off the Dome podcast as compared to a little bit of scripted content. and then we will go ahead and tweak as necessary. So it's been a pleasure. I'm Jazel.
I'm Yasser.
And we will see you guys next Sunday. Take care, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Take care.